Hi, I'm Bob Fallowfield. If you're like me, you enjoy rail fanning and model railroading. And if you're like me, you enjoy engaging in interesting conversations about all things trains. Please join me and my friends on the platform. Hello everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of The Platforum. The Platforum, what's that? It's the podcast for the rail fan and the model railroader alike. Where is the platform? Well, I can't tell you exactly, but I will tell you this. It is a hot summer day and we are on the north shore of Lake Ontario. We are along a busy railway right-of-way of the Canadian National Railway, somewhere between Toronto and Montreal, and I can tell you that the mercury is off the charts. So if we're a little sweaty on the platform today, we're going to have to deal with it. On today's episode, the very first episode, I've invited three of my friends who are in the hobby. I've got Bob Scott here, who is owner of Credit Valley Railway Company. Bob is the owner, and it's the largest hobby shop in Canada. I have Neil Schofield with me, who is HO model railroader. He's my brother in Action Red. We're both CP rail modelers, modeling in 1980. Little different piece of the system, but we connect somehow. Our trains connect, Neil. And last but certainly not least, I have Dave Mcclain. Dave is a co-founder of Little Canada. You may have heard of it previously as Our Home in Miniature Land, now known as Little Canada. And Dave is also an avid O-scaler, not three-rail Dave. I have a three-rail Dave. You're my two-rail friend. So I have three-rail Dave and I have two-rail Dave. So two-rail Dave is with us today on the platform.
Less is more.
Less is more? Yeah, less rail is more. Yeah. Guys, thanks for being here today. It is
Thanks for the heat.
hot. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
This was a great idea in February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How come it took you so long?
Well, we had to set up some equipment and it took a few months. Took 5 months to get set up. We also have a fourth guest today that we want to tell you about, and that is the railway itself. I alluded to it earlier. The railway will be our fourth guest and is very much a part of today's show. So what will happen is we will hear the gates and bells. There is a protected crossing near us. When the crossing bells go, we know that a train is on the way, and we're going to enjoy the passage of the train, rail fanning here on the platform, and we want you to rail fan along with us. That's the beauty of this location. We also have a Railstream rail cam that is mounted on the station, and we will be switching back and forth from that camera as well to give us an even better picture of the action that's happening on the rails. One of the local features that's kind of interesting and unique to this grade crossing, and you will see it on the Railstream cam, is we have a double track main line that goes over the road, and the rail line is super elevated, which means that it is banked. So that means that as the roadway runs parallel over the super elevation, it makes for a very bumpy and adventurous crossing, especially northbound. And well, speak of the devil, our fourth guest is arriving.
Almost on cue.
Almost on cue.
Well played.
I did not call the CEO of Canadian National. We did not plan this. Our fourth guest will be arriving here shortly. The super elevation bit you may or may not see on the Railstream, but if we get some northbound vehicles taking that crossing too fast, they tend to bottom out. We'll hear some oil pan scrapes. We'll bleep out any obscenities. This is a family-friendly show on the platform, but you can be sure that we'll at least get a few good views on the Railstream cam. I hear a rumble. Let's have a look. What's going by? Beauty.
Lovely.
Oh, it's just a via.
Just another via train.
Just a via.
Yeah. I will
They're
say that on
everywhere.
this particular rail line where we're sitting, there's a maximum of 52 trains a day that go by. So hopefully our fourth guest won't be shy, and we will have many trains to watch, and you'll be able to take in the action with us. Bob, I want to go back to you. I mentioned that you are the owner of Credit Valley Railway Company in Mississauga. Tell us a little bit about how it is that Credit Valley came to be, and your journey in business and where you are today.
Well, started in retail before the Credit Valley. Building center, worked with a lot of people, got up fairly high in the business, but just never really kind of felt like it was my calling, if you know what I mean. So over a couple of cold beers, one late November day, sat down and kind of went over a game plan and thought kind of neat to open a train shop. There wasn't one in the area. Pick Streetsville, a little town that the Credit Valley used to go through. Anybody in history in Ontario knows the Credit Valley back from the 1800s. The CP main line goes right behind the store, and also in our new location, which we moved to about 10 years ago.
Both locations are along the same rail line.
Same rail line.
Is that a happy accident, or was that planned?
Well, the happy accident would have been if we'd actually been able to see the line from the store, because everybody kind of runs to the back door now, but it's kind of much like the CN line here, CP. There's probably 30 or 40 trains a day, plus GO Transit. But anyways, it just, we started the business fairly small, kind of sowed our wheats, kind of, getting a feel for what people wanted, different manufacturers, but always wanted to just be that different shop, if you know what I mean.
You want to be different, differentiate yourself.
Yeah, carry that hard to find item, fast special orders service. I'm a modeler myself, and I know if I'm in the middle of something, oh geez, I need this or that. You want your shop to carry that, and I make a real push, in our weekly ordering to make sure that we carry what everybody's looking for.
That's why you've got 90% Bangor and Aroostook.
That's right, yeah. Bangor or Boston and Maine,
Bob's a big Bangor and Aroostook fan. Actually, I think you're one of two people I know that are.
That's
I think
right.
There's two of you now.
The two of us in Canada
There's
now.
two of you in Canada that model the Bangor and
That's
Aroostook.
right, that's right.
So you started in 93, so that's 26
years ago. Never kind of looked back. Growing a little bit every year. The inventory is quite manageable. We carry a full range of products, from somebody that's an expert all the way down to somebody bringing their son in to start their train set for the first time. It's important to carry the full gamut of products. We've never kind of ventured outside of trains so that we can carry the full depth. For somebody like yourself, redoing some cars and whatever, you need the little couplers or whatever you might happen to need. We carry it all.
I have a name for your store. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Candyland.
Candyland, yeah. We just need little stools at the counter for you to come in.
Yeah, we call it Candyland.
Missed mortgage payment.
Yeah, missed mortgage payment. Or credit card valley, because I like to pay cash because I get a better rate.
That's right. You get cash back.
Yeah. Neil Schofield.
Yeah.
What's going on, brother?
So, yep, I'm
Thanks for being here.
made a trip all the way up from Massachusetts, brought my Boston accent, so I parked the car out
Parked
front
the
there.
car. Yeah. See, Neil told me earlier that he was mentioning his khakis, and I thought he was talking about his shorts. He was wearing his khakis. No, he lost his khakis. He couldn't get in his truck.
But I made it up here, And I model the Boston and Maine and CP rail operations in Vermont.
You don't have to mention the Boston and Maine.
Well,
just the CP part.
The combination of the two is just a magical type of
You keep
marriage.
dreaming, buddy.
And I've been a prototype modeler my entire life, and always enjoyed it. And it's one of the best parts about this hobby is you get to meet other people in the hobby. And a few years ago, I was attending a prototype modelers meet in Connecticut, and unfortunately, they let the Canadian in from Toronto, and I got a chance to meet Bob. And it was instantly, it was great. I mean, somebody modeling the Boston or the CP operations in 1980, almost same year as myself.
Yep.
And we instantly hit it off and started talking, started comparing photos and getting a chance to see each other's layouts. And it was great. It's been, unfortunately, I've had to add you to my Rolodex for the last few years.
I'm on the blocked call list.
Yeah, but it's great. And then coming up here, I got to meet Bob and Dave and a bunch of other people up here, so it's fun to come up here.
Well, I really appreciate you all being here. I even appreciate you, Dave Mcclain, being here.
Well, that's new.
Thanks for coming. We were going to have an HO only rule here on the platform, but there's room for an O scaler, I guess.
Well, someone has to someone has to carry the heavy load.
Might as well be you.
That's right.
Yeah. Dave Mcclain, tell us about Little Canada, formerly known as our home in Miniatureland. Maybe tell us a little bit about the new marketing name and a little bit about the project and where people can go to find you.
Right. Well, I'll start with the project itself. Little Canada is going to be a new attraction that'll be opening up in Toronto, hopefully next summer. If you want to find out more about Little Canada, and we'll show the website here, but it's little-canada.ca is the website. But it'll be something new and exciting. It'll be a vast animated miniature world. And hold on.
Is that our fourth guest, I hear?
Another interruption by our fourth guest.
Yeah, another fourth. Keep going, Dave.
So Little Canada will be a place where you can see all of Canada in an afternoon. Walk around, it'll be 40,000 square feet in a location in downtown Toronto, and we'll be able to, you'll be able to see that next summer.
Passenger train, freight train?
I think it's going to be
Passenger train.
Another passenger.
Rudely interrupted by our fourth guest. It's expected. It's a welcomed interruption here on the platform.
So people may have heard of the project already, called Our Home in Miniatureland, but we decided to shorten the name up a little bit and also make it a little more definitive.
Shorten the name up.
Shorten the name.
Little
Get
Canada.
it? Make it a little more definitive, what it's all about. So it is a little version of Canada, sort of like Little Italy or Little Portugal you might find in Toronto. Now, this is Little Canada. But that's been a fun project. I've been involved in it for 8 years.
Feels like 18.
It does it sometimes. I mean, you talk about, like Bob, turning your hobby into a business.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a bit challenging. But we're having fun. We're doing something really unique and exciting for the Canadian market. If you're a miniature enthusiast or model railroad, there'll be lots of trains running around. But more so, you'll see things of Canada in ways that you've never seen it. We'll even have what we call the North, which will be a depiction of Canada's vast northern landscapes. But the cool thing is it'll be in a cold room. So when you walk in, it'll be, which is a nice thought for today.
You could have brought that with us.
Yeah.
Maybe we got a shot from there.
So yeah, I've been involved in the project for 8 years. We had actually been building it since January of 2014 in a warehouse in Mississauga, and we'll be moving it all to a to shortly be disclosed location in downtown Toronto. So we're very close to being able to publicly announce that.
You said you're 8 years in?
Yep.
8 years in on a project of that scale can be grinding.
It's been exciting. I wouldn't say the feedback we're getting we've had about 3,000 visitors through our shop facility. And
arranged
here's
this,
another
Dave.
right.
Yeah, our fourth guest is coming back.
This is not planned, by the way, folks. This is actually how it's happening.
Yeah.
This
Notice
is
everybody
funny.
else got to talk, and poor Dave keeps getting stepped on by trains.
So no, I'm very enthusiastic. The response we get from many of our guests are one of astonishment. And when are you going to be open? Where are you going to be? So it'll be fun. It'll be very, very exciting project to see.
You've also had the good fortune of having the Toronto and area media sort of stop by to visit you from time to time. So you've had some coverage on news programs and so on. Yeah,
we've had about 40 articles and newspapers and TV interviews. So it's, even though we're not open to the public or even of a launch date, there's a lot of interest already, which is pretty cool. Very excited about that and very enthused, because you have to put your heart and soul into this, and it's nice to get some nice feedback. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, 8 years in, like I say, it can be a grind. It can be a passion, but it's also a grind. Look who showed up.
What manufacturer are those engines?
Let's go watch.
They haven't been weathered.
Come on, guys. Oh, Boston to
look
Maine,
at that.
Boston to
There's your
Maine.
car.
Oh, there we go. All right. Hey,
There they are, 2 of them.
I need a manufacturer to make one of those for me. This was making the pickup that we saw, probably.
I'm not mic'd over here, so I got to use Neil's mic. Neil, we're going to get nice and close here. That's an interesting car.
Yeah.
The one with the orange stripe on it.
We were looking at that earlier. We can't figure out the
Guilford?
lineage of it.
Milford, yeah.
Guilford had the orange stripe?
Yeah, wasn't that
Yeah,
with
but
the
that's
G?
not a Guilford car. I don't
No.
recognize it. Almost like maybe a sugar service or something.
Oh, here's some very much CN line Kingston sub product, the big aluminum ingots.
Oh yeah. Yeah. On the Atlas flat cars, right? Shop flat cars.
Yep, that was short,
Oh, that's a lot
short
of-
bulkhead flats.
There's all your soda cans. Soda.
Yeah, right. Soda.
Soda can.
My soda pop.
Soda pop. On its to or from DeFasco maybe in Hamilton?
No, that's all aluminum from what's north of Quebec City up
The Saguenay area?
the Saguenay. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. You can actually see that.
Yeah.
How many pounds is that? It's usually I have it on the side. 51,000 pounds, kind of.
Yeah, 70, there's one, 41,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
1075. That's petroleum.
Yep.
Non-odorized petroleum gas.
That's kind of like Bob.
I don't have a mic over here. That's a good thing.
IQ paper boxes.
Yeah, little shorties.
Isn't that a tangent car?
Wow. Carload of coal.
Yeah, that's a tangent, Illinois Central.
Could wind up on your railroad, Bob.
Yeah. I'll put one aside for you, Bob.
Look how they lean into the curve here. Isn't that?
Carbon black car.
Yeah.
Scale trains.
Yep.
Yeah, go touch it. Think you'll have a DPU on it?
Yeah, it's possible. Is there a single unit on the front?
It's two.
Two.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. There's the
Probably
slack
not.
ran out. Yeah, it'll pull up.
This portion of the platform is brought to you by ScaleTrains.com. Developing model railroad products that modelers will be excited to own. You can see the difference. And by ITLA Scale Models, where the city meets the railway, providing unique and configurable laser-cut structure kits to the modeling community.
They're nearing the end of their life, those cars.
283 it says, yeah.
Look at all the grain growing up at the end.
Yeah.
Some of these got quite
Putting-
the...
That's a putting green.
Yeah, look at that. We could do some modeling with that.
Yeah.
And someone would like, what's that?
Who says you need all the turf on the ground?
Yeah. A lot of grain cars. That surprises me.
Yeah. We saw a lot of cars in Belleville Yard. They made the pickup.
Slowly accelerating.
There's one from 1179.
Yeah.
British Columbia double door.
I quite often watch the train as it goes by. Okay, that's Athens made that car.
Bob's going 43.9. Bob's going 43.95, 23.79.
That's right.
Plus tax.
That's right.
Would you like a bag with that?
Right, and even more because they're pre-weathered.
Yeah. You like some decals with that.
Yeah. I know it's part of model railroading, but I don't like the graffiti. No.
Yeah.
I'm sure the owners of the cars don't either.
No, not over the reporting marks either.
Yeah.
There's a new one there.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Some lumber loads.
Lumba.
Lumber.
The
Not too
lumba.
long out of Oakville. They still making Oakville, the Pro Car? They still have the plant
yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Canada Car in Hamilton's busier than ever too with those
National
new
Steel?
hoppers. They're
Yeah.
doing.
The owner of that lives up the street from me.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, yeah. He's got a big, huge horse farm called the Iron Horse.
Oh, okay.
And every one of his barns is horse barns, which there's no horses in, by the way. But every horse barn is modeled after a station.
Okay.
So they look like train stations on his farm. Yeah,
Oh, neat.
yeah, it's really neat. And these aren't small structures. These are huge structures.
What scale?
Well, 1-to-1. It's
Oh, 1-to-1.
real
I
life,
see.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear you for the train.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You said that was the owner of NOCO?
No, of National Steel Car in
Oh,
Hamilton.
NSC.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll bet you that cut on the head end was probably lifted out of the yard that we saw earlier today.
Yeah. Well, he
When
was.
we were
I saw him in the yard. He was. See the head end of that train. Maybe it's the same train. Probably.
Newer car.
Look at the scratches on
Is
it.
that Trinity? Is that a Trinity build?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at all the scratches on it.
Yeah. It's kind of an odd rust pattern.
Yeah.
Almost looks like sheet music.
Well, they used to have a couple of short trains around here, don't they?
Yeah.
Must be a huge layout. Guy runs long trains.
Yeah.
Imagine if
That's those American Limited special hoppers with the piping
Oh, yeah.
underneath.
Oh yeah. More hopper cars.
Cement cars.
Wow. Not a sight you often see in Ontario. String of hopper cars.
Burlington Northern.
Best near Lake Erie.
Yeah.
There's the hopper somebody needs to build
Wisconsin
right there.
Central.
Right there.
Eastern 3 bay, 100-ton hopper.
Yeah.
PCI label is still on it.
Yep.
BLE. Yeah. Okay.
So Dave, we were talking about Little Canada. So 8 years in, you're still jazzed. It's a grind, like it's a lot of work. You've been kind enough to take me for some tours of the facility, and the modeling is unbelievable. The one that really hits me is the Toronto segment, or
Right,
whatever you want to
skyline,
call
yeah,
it. Union Station.
Right.
Tell us about the complexity of just building all those ladder tracks and the station, and what can you tell us about that?
Well, each of the designs, we call them destinations. So Toronto's, it's about 1,200 square feet of modeled world. Each one of the destinations takes about 30,000 hours and about $1 million worth of investment, mostly labor to get these things built. But it's a real collaborative effort. It's there's a whole team. There's about 25 of us. And by the way, if you're interested in looking, we do have a few job openings right now. So if there's
You wouldn't
anyone,
hire me?
no, well, we'd have to.
The
let's
kiddie
talk.
program, he'd be good at that.
That's right. All right, we have some.
I can hear the resume going through the shredder as we
Right,
speak.
we have some wooden track you could play with.
Some Legos, I'm
Yeah.
sure. mixed
Yeah.
in there.
No, it's a real collaborative effort. So every time we design and build another destination, you have to go through a whole process of what are you going to actually feature in it. Right now, we're doing the same thing for our Quebec City destination. There's 200 things you want to include in it, so you have to pick 20. And even still, it takes tens of thousands of hours to do it. But that's the detail, and the detail is what people find very interesting. So, it'll be fun when we open next summer. It won't be the end of the construction effort. We'll be building the rest of Canada for about the next 10 years too. So,
And you highlighted the Union Station,
Yeah.
but I've been there many times too, and it must be one of the smallest segments of the layout, but it's the original Tim Hortons
yeah.
from Hamilton that was made on the layout, and it actually has the donuts.
Oh,
in
the detail.
counter.
Oh,
Like that's the kind of
Oh,
detail
wow.
we're talking about here. We're not talking about, oh, that building looks nice or that curb looks nice. It's the
Right.
the detail of every little thing.
Those
like,
are low-calorie donuts.
They are.
really
yeah.
low. Yeah.
Well, the closer you are to we have sort of a detail guide where the closer the model is to the guest, the more detail it gets. So, one of the challenges in turning a hobby into a business is knowing when to stop. How much detail do you put on? And you have to actually come up with a guideline to it, because the challenge is you're building. You're a model builder. You're working in Little Canada, and you have a model that's sitting in front of you on your workbench, but it's going to be 8 feet away from the guest. Well, the challenge is it's right in front of you, so your tendency is to keep building and adding more and more detail, but then that detail is lost because there's just so much else going on, and the model's now 8 feet away from the guest, so whoever sees it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the fun part is
Yeah.
coming up with that.
Well, it's definitely been exciting to see it come along because I was one of the early tours, I guess, through there, and I remember when it was pretty empty.
Right.
It was a whole lot of dreaming and a whole lot of concrete blocks.
Yep.
And a
There's
lot of
Dave
fluorescent
sitting
lights.
up front in the office going, "What have I done? What now? What? How do I find people?"
That was
But
only when it was half of one building.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I've been very blessed to be. A lot of great people have. We found a lot of people have found us too. So it's been an interesting exercise and getting people, and it's from a real diverse background. We don't look for people exclusively from the model railroad hobby. There's a lot of people with just a lot of creativity that can come in and do all sorts of wonderful things. From literally designing and building buildings, to scenery, to electronics, to mechanical systems. There's more and more to it every time. So
A lot of aspects of everything in the hobby, whether it's electrical,
yeah,
Yeah.
building,
I often refer to what you're doing at Little Canada. I call it industrial model railroading
yeah,
because
that's a good way.
we've talked about you've actually worn out locomotives.
Yeah, yeah.
You've actually worn them out.
And we will do more of that. I mean, it's they're at the end of the day they're tools.
Yeah.
People. We have a couple of people that are very much from the hobby. I'm like, look, it's just a locomotive. If it fails,
Yeah.
put it on put it in the shop, just like in real railroading. You have to do maintenance on equipment, and we'll have to do that too. Because
I remember one time I was there in your office. You had a pair of, I think they were Athearn Genesis SD70 Aces or 75Is or something, and I said, "Oh, what's going on with those?" He said, "Well, we wore them out.
they fried.
Got to go in for an A1 overhaul or whatever, Class A overhaul."
The wheel sets wore through.
Yeah, square wheels. Yeah. So that gives our audience an idea of who you are and a little bit of why we're here. I had a word that I've been thinking about for the last week or so. And the word I've been thinking about as it pertains to the hobby is the word inspiration. And when I was considering us meeting today to railfan and to hang out and on the platform, I thought, I'm going to ask you guys a little bit about inspiration. I know my own, because none of us are young guys. We're not spring chickens anymore.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
So I used to say I had salt and pepper, and I got a little more salt coming all the time. And if you're Neil, you're looking for pepper. So
That's right.
hot pepper.
Mature, it's aging.
Oh,
It's
mature.
good.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I
Keep
tell
telling
myself,
yourself that,
yeah.
buddy.
It works.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dignified look.
Dignified,
Yeah, that's right,
yes,
right.
mature.
Right.
But the word inspiration, and I got thinking about my own journey in the hobby, and for me as a kid growing up in the 80s, I had two main sources of inspiration. We're talking pre-internet, so it's easy to put our 2019 eyes on and look at things. But if you go back, and I go back to being a kid in the 80s, there were two sources of inspiration for me. One was growing up in the shadow of a small town rail yard. So I had the prototype. Couplers banging, hose bags coming apart as they're switching, diesels throttling up and down, all the freight cars going by with all the slogans of the day. The other was the hobby press. I can't tell you the last time I bought a paper magazine, but in the 80s, I was all over RMC, Model Railroader, and so on. And for me, there were a couple of things that were big for me, and I'll come back to the second one. I'll mention the first one quickly, but I'm more interested in what's inspired you guys. What inspired me was an article in the January 1987 issue of Model Railroader, and it was by Richard Cam. He had the Sue line, S-U-E. I think it was named after his wife or something. The Sue line, and the article was called "You're the Brakeman on the Quincy Local." And what grabbed me about that as a 10-year-old boy at the time, leafing through this, I'd bought the magazine with my paper route money, and I'm sitting in the shade.
Right.
What are you laughing at?
How's that going, Bob? With the paper route?
I was going to say.
Huh?
I'm sorry.
What are you laughing at? What, did I work? I actually worked?
Yeah,
Did some work?
that was the most funniest part of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Probably
All
should have stuck
yeah.
to that
But
career. You
as I
made
leafed
something of
through it,
yourself.
what Richard was doing with that article is it occurred to me that he wasn't just a collector of model trains. He wasn't just haphazardly running these Athearn and model die casting and front range cars around on bench work. He was running a railroad. He had built a railroad to operate it as a railroad. And there's our fourth guest is now going to interrupt me.
I think it's our fifth time of our fourth
But
guest.
I'll wrap this up, and after our fourth guest appears and leaves, we'll go to Bob. But The article, and those listening or watching can check it out. January 87 Model Railroader, You're the Brakeman on the Quincy Local. But he detailed how he used waybills and how he stopped in each town and he blocked the train and he put the lifts and the set-offs in the train in different orders. So when he got to town A, he'd set off a boxcar and he'd lift a tank car. And it really struck me that what he was doing in his basement was a lot of what I was seeing on the prototype. And for me, I made that early connection between prototype and model. Here's our fourth guest. Another Via train.
It's amazing to see the Bud car still in service. That's just amazing.
And that stainless steel never gets old.
Yeah.
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 Bob, what was it for you back in the 1800s when you got into the hobby? That now the printing press,
wood burning locomotives.
The printing press was around, right? So.
Yeah, the printing press. I think it was still slates with scratch pads. But yeah, I mean, you were talking about you as a kid. The memory that for trains for me as a kid was always at my grandparents' cottage in the summer. My parents would ship me off for a couple of months, and they had a cabin up in Thunder Bay, and it was on, I think it's the Kinghorn sub. It's ripped up now, but right along the lake shore. And we'd have our camp, and every time I could hear a train coming, I'd be like running like heck from the beach up to the road to be able to wave to the engineer.
How old would you have been, roughly?
Oh, probably 8 or 9.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't run so fast when I was older, but you'd still kind of be around and listening for it, you know. And that was my early, and then going down into town, or uptown as they called it then, and seeing all the trains. This is before the days of the big ore unloading facility. They used to push with GMD1s, push the ore cars up over this big trestle in the middle of town out into the ore dock. And I remember, you know, my grandparents would be shopping somewhere and I'd be watching this train going up the trestle, and it just always stuck with me as a kid. And of course I was like everybody else in my era, had a train at home, and never really thought much of it, especially through my teenage and early adult life. But it kind of came back to roost, you know, as I got a bit older, and thought that'd be really kind of a neat business to kind of do. And we started from nothing, and 26 years later we're still going strong. So the hobby isn't dying by any sense of the imagination, especially, you know, when you get a lot of people with stories like yourself that want to recreate in miniature their past or a place they know of, some place they're fond of. And it's I know, like you know, you're modeling something that has always been familiar to you.
Yeah. Going back.
So Neil, tell us about when you sort of think back to, I know your dad was a big influence, but are there certain articles, or did you go see a layout? Did something like what?
I guess
what happened to you?
Oh my God.
We don't have that kind of time.
Do I have to pay a therapist for this? Because this could take a while. But
here, I'll get up so you can lie down.
Yeah. But you know, I have to say, you know, my dad was a big supporter. My dad was a model railroader since he was a kid, and so I grew up in a house that had a 34 by 26 foot basement built layout. Of course, my dad was modeling the steam. Every time he went upstairs, I'd take my diesels down and plop them on the layout and take over the layout on them. And there's
Dad's working overtime. It's Boston Main night.
There's a whole series of stories with that. But you know, I had a lot of inspiration for articles and the layout I'm modeling. But I can say that probably some of the earliest memories I had as a kid, I can remember I was in first grade, and my dad at the time was working out in Colony, New York. He worked in construction. They were rebuilding some of the mills out in Colony, New York. And we had a round-robin group of guys that I grew up with. And on a Friday afternoon, some of my dad's buddies picked me up from first grade at 12 o'clock And we drove out to meet my dad out in the Albany, New York area, Colony, New York, and we spent the weekend. We went to Selkirk Yard, Conrail facilities there. We went to Mechanicsville, the time we get to Mechanicsville, and I still have memories of seeing B&M Jeeps pull into the engine servicing facilities. We went down to the Dean H side of the yard when they still had the roundhouse there and the engine facilities. And I can just remember, you know, as a 7-year-old kid, your eyes just lighting up and just seeing Alcos everywhere. I mean, it was just the whole sense and the feel of just, that was what prototype railroading was all about. But we went so far, we ended up spending the day in Colony, and back in that time around, it was about 1978 or 79, you could go to Colony shops and pay $1 to sign a waiver and go and walk around the shops.
Best dollar you ever spent.
Oh my God,
Good
it
old
was
days.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was some of the earliest recollections and things that I have that stuck in my memory. As far as someday I'd like to build models of this, you know, as I got a little bit older and stuff like that. My dad was always supportive of it too, which was really great. So, but yeah.
I hear our fourth guest. Tell me about magazines when you were little, the role they played,
So
a special article that appealed to you.
one of the great things too is my dad used to get subscription to Railfan and Railroad, Trains Magazine, Model Railroader, RMC, so you used to get all those. So, you know, that special time of the month would come when they'd get to, my dad would go to the hobby shop, usually would pick them all up and I'd spend the afternoon. But there was as I got older, and I was always attracted to the Connecticut River Line operations of the Boston, Maine, Central Vermont, and CP Rail. And then in particular, there was an issue July 1980 Railfan and Railroad article by Scott Hartley. And it was basically about the CP and Boston and Maine operations in northern Vermont. And it's kind of, everybody's got their Bible, so to speak. That was it.
Yeah.
And I can remember, I actually have 2 issues of the magazine, because the first one, of course, the cover was torn off, and it would always
dog-eared. And
wherever I was in the house, it always followed me, and I always picked it up. But it really, I mean, I read, studied the photographs, and just fell in love with that part of basically the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont.
Were there any color photos in that article, or was it all black and white?
Just on the cover.
On the cover.
Just the cover, but
Yeah.
but yeah, inside it was all black and white, and that's at the time. That's what the article, or that's what the magazines were printing.
Yeah,
was a
that's
lot of
why I
black and
asked. I
white.
wondered if there was it
But-
was rare to find a colored photo in the
Yeah.
magazines.
Sounds like a freight.
back then. Another freight train.
Yeah, beautiful.
had a bit of a fire.
Oh, they pulled both of them. Both have like fire damage near the exhaust.
Gets a little quieter. We can actually probably talk through this too.
I don't know, Neil. Those are an awful lot of tank cars. You know, this is a horrible location to try and do a rail fan and model railroading podcast.
I got distracted.
We should have went to Dave's cold room.
We should put the whole platform on wheels, and it would swing around when the train came by.
Well,
It's absolutely terrible. We're out here trying to talk about rail fan and railroad in 1980, and a train goes by. So frustrating.
More in Bessemer and Lake Erie
Hey,
cars.
Burlington Northern again.
Burlington Northern.
That's the
There you
same
go. All right.
train. It's a big loop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time around. At least they were nice enough to swap the motive power out for
Yeah.
us. Time around.
Catch me in an honest moment, and I'll tell you I got a little bit of a thing for the Burlington Northern.
That was
BN,
a neat layout.
BN was
Yeah.
pretty neat. Yeah.
Early BN for sure.
Early BN. Yeah.
You still
The
got
orange
Alcos
cab
and stuff.
face didn't do anything for me.
No.
Or with
no.
like the orange stripes, they didn't do anything for me. But
The original, the SD40-2
BN
King.
was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of new cars on that.
And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Lippincott and Margulies, the New York ad agency that was responsible for the Multimark and CP Rails rebranding, Also,
did the
if I'm not
BM?
mistaken, they also rebranded, like they did the Burlington Northern's logo.
That from 71. You mean that was what
makes
was that
sense,
form?
yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
It was, yeah, Lippincott and Margulies.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah. I may be wrong.
Because the multi-mark was 68.
68.
68.
Yeah. The multi-mac. You talk funny, Schofield.
A little bit, yeah.
I think he thinks we talk funny.
Hey, what? Hey.
At least he doesn't say Pac-Man like everybody else
Oh.
does.
Oh, my ears.
That's
Carbon
your
black.
favorite when they call it the Pac-Man.
My ears.
I'm surprised how quiet they are. Like, even though it's right here, it's not like.
What's this moving?
You
don't
can
hear
see
much
through that.
No, you don't hear his flange squeal right there. Sometimes you hear that.
This portion of the platform is brought to you by Rimettes, the fastest way to bring the illusion of 3D detail to the insides of your model railroad structures. And by Fast Tracks, helping the world build better railroads with a complete line of high-quality hand tools, specially selected for hand-laying track work.
I'm gonna take the chance to stand up for a bit.
We lucked out. This cloud moved in right when we started.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes the DPU.
Okay.
DPU. Looks like we have a fifth guest coming. Oh, wow.
Wish it was busier.
basically what the DPUs do. They're just two trains connected. And,
Yeah. Sorry, Neil, you got stepped on there.
yeah, so we're going back talking about the July 1980 issue of Railfan and Railroad. And at the time, I was, how old was I? I guess I was 9 years old reading the article. I read it because it was interested in New England railroads. It was Boston, Maine CP rail operations, and I still remember it. But there was a lot of other influence, a lot of our articles. There was a two-part series in 1982, Trains magazine. I can't remember the months, but it was basically the trunks of the tree of the CP, CV, and Boston, Maine operations in the Connecticut River line that talked about the operations all the way from Springfield right up through White River Junction, up to the CV split and went up to St. Albans, and the CP continued north to basically Newport and onto Farnham. But just a lot of those magazine articles that I would spend as a kid, just every night before I went to bed, I'd have a stack of 10, 12 magazines that I would flip through and put me to bed at night. But of course, as I went on, I had other interests. I went to other railroads, Delaware and Hudson, all came in. But ultimately, once you finally you grow up, so to speak, and you own a house.
Do we all grow up?
Some of us do. Bob. Well, we give up hope on him, but you dream. And I can remember the first time I walked in the house when my wife and I were looking at the house. She goes upstairs to look at the kitchen and everything else. I go right down to the basement. Okay, how big is this basement? And you can envision. You're a big kid in the basement, and this is what you can envision. So. I'm now on my third model railroad, but it's, I'm hoping this one I can get to completion, and, I still have a passion for the hobby and still enjoy it very much, and it's great.
I want to come back to that, Neil, when you say you still have a passion. I'm going to come back and talk about that. Mr. O Scale, Mr. Two-Rail Dave, tell us about
how did it all start?
Yeah, early inspiration, how you got started in the late 1800s. And
it was the early 1800s. Just let's get it right. Like many of you, my dad was the inspiration. Dad built the first model railway. My first model railway was a piece of plywood on the ground with an oval of track, and I think there's some pictures of me. My brother's off playing with his new big dump truck that he got, and there I am lying on the floor as the train's whipping around in circles forever and ever. I think it was 3. But Dad built an HO model railway in one of our houses, and so that was fun and interesting. He had more fun with it than I did. I was quite young.
Now, was this in Nova Scotia?
No, this is in Ontario.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But after we moved from Nova Scotia to Ontario.
Okay.
And then, like many others, that sort of the hobby kind of came and went with me in high school and university. It didn't have. I was still interested. I'd read the occasional model railroader or Trains magazine, but I wasn't involved in the hobby very much. But the one part of the hobby that really influenced me was a visit that my dad took me to in November of 1970. We went and saw the O-Scale Model Railroad Club of Toronto, which was then located in Liberty Village in Toronto, in the west part of Toronto. And to me, it's this wide-eyed 8-year-old, there I'm giving my age away, walking into this 5,000 square foot, O-Scale model railway.
Big trains
Big,
now.
huge trains, with, slack action in the couplers. I can still remember, as a kid hearing the train start up and the train would stretch out and you hear, brrr, the slack action in the couplers. So that always stuck with me, this O-Scale kind of view on things, and I was always loved going back to the O-Scale club. So basically, after I graduated, and it was sort of time to, am I getting more interested to get back into the hobby? I went down and actually went to an open house at the Model Railroad Club of Toronto, and after the open house, I joined, and that was in the 1990s. So here we are, 29 years later.
Yeah, you're almost a 30-year member at the O-Scale Club.
Yeah. And so it's influenced me from that. I mean, I love O-Scale, I love the heft and the weight. You can't put as much in a room as anything else.
Just get a bigger room.
Yeah, I need a bigger room. Yeah,
it's easier said than done.
That's the problem with model railroading. Like we were talking about how you need real estate to do model railroading.
Yeah. O-Scale is a wonderful scale. I actually I have a heart for O-Scale. For me, HO is almost a compromise, just because of space. But when I look at your hand laid track and what you're doing in 2-rail, it's I could easily. It wouldn't be kicking and screaming. I think I'd voluntarily go into 2-rail low.
Well, and what here I do model building at work, and I joined the club, but to top it all off, I also very interested in having a home model railway, which recently had to dismantle because we've just moved, but there's plans afoot for the rebuilding. But it's also, like you guys, it's a CP derivative. It's the Dominion Atlantic Railway that ran in Nova Scotia. It was a wholly owned subsidiary of the CP. Most of it's gone now, like many other cool model railways, but it was this 200-mile long Class 1 mainline operation, and it's perfect for O-scale because a typical DAR steam era train, passenger train, was 5 cars long. So you think O-scale, you have a Pacific, a baggage car, and a few coaches in the parlor, and that's a prototypic length train that ran in that era. So why DAR? Because when I grew up as a little boy, we lived in this little town of Kentville, which was the head shops for the DAR. And so my first memory of trains, not steam era, I'm not that old, stop, but were the Dayliner.
Weren't they horses back then, and the wagons were on the rails?
The Dayliner, I remember going down to watch the brand new, which was, now it's an RDC1 that I know of.
I was just going to say, the Bud cars.
The Dayliner, CP parlance.
Right. Yeah. Probably one of the ones, probably the same one that Jason bought. I probably saw that as a kid, that engine.
Jason Schron from Rapido Trains has an RDC.
He didn't pay us for that, by the way.
Yeah.
He will now.
That's right. Yeah.
Jason, bills in the mail.
That's right. So that's the inspiration. I still love O-scale, hand lay on my track. Me, the civil engineer, what I always love, infrastructure, track, bridges.
Dave, will you stop?
Are there? Yeah. Look, one call to the CEO, and look what happens.
Yeah. What influenced me is a favorite article or model, or interestingly, it was John Allen's model railway that Gorian defeated. For whatever reason, I just thought that was such a cool model railway. You look at it in today's concepts, it's a very 1950s era spaghetti bowl kind of layout, but maybe what I liked about it, was, he ran prototypic operations, which was a very big interest when I joined the O-scale club. He had spectacular bridges, which, I like to do too, so. Hear the dynamics whining as they're coming to a stop in the station there.
It's funny you mentioned John Allen. I do remember that. I think I read an article that he was one of the first ones to start weathering his equipment.
Yeah.
Like that time and era, he was one of the first ones to weather equipment. But I know what you mean. He's inspiring.
Another, if you ever read the famous Frank Ellison articles from the 1940s, The Art of Model Railroading. If you've never read it, it's really interesting. It's this guy, Frank Ellison, who lived in New Orleans, who built a functioning model railway, a miniature railway, not a train set or anything that was sort of more common of the day. It was actually a layout where trains had purpose, and passenger trains ran by schedule, and freights, had purpose.
This was the idea of that Richard Cam article that I referenced, the brakeman on the Quincy Local. It wasn't just some sort of kamikaze, haphazard, open the transformer and let the horses run. It was a railway, and it made sense, and things had purpose, and box cars were. Well, there's always been that thing with early layouts where they send put 3 box cars at an industry that's the size of half a shoebox. And you think, how on earth? There's more square footage in the box cars than there is in the building.
Right.
But there was purpose and there was movement to it for sure. Dave, one quick question I had for you on the Dominion Atlantic. As far as you know, is there any vestige of the old railway today? Are there any preserved stations? Is there any rail in the ground?
Yeah, there's still track in the ground. The connection in Nova Scotia at Windsor Junction, which is near Halifax, has been lifted, so there's no more physical connection to the real world. And the last, it was the Windsor and Hansport Railway, and it was strictly around to. There was a couple of gypsum mines, which was always big business for the DAR, as running gypsum from the mines to the Tidewater. And
Bay of Fundy.
Bay of Fundy, yeah. So it survived for that, but when in 2008, when the economic crash happened, they closed the gypsum mines, and that was the end of that for the DAR and the Windsor and Hansport. But so there's still tracks in the ground. It goes. But they're not used anymore.
So the gypsum mine was pretty much probably 99% of their traffic, right? If not
at the end, it was all gypsum.
So when the gypsum shut down, they were done.
Right. So they, and interestingly, in the early days, the Annapolis Valley was known for its apples. And so what did it, there were apple warehouses all along the DAR, and actually apparently like a quarter of the world's apples came from the Annapolis Valley.
Oh, wow.
And were shipped, they took them by train to Halifax, and they took from Halifax across the ocean into Europe. So that was the main reason the DAR got started, was that it was serving the big fruit industry in the Annapolis
And so
Valley.
that whole scene is what you're trying to capture with your. I know you're starting in a new residence, but that's what you want to recreate, a portion of the DAR.
Yeah, I'm very interested in. I like steam engines. I'm not such a steam fan. What I like about the era is that it was much more involved. You had full passenger operations. Everything still ran by rail. Wasn't the prevalence of trucks. So don't get me wrong. I loved a good model of a diesel, especially with the sound systems you can get into in them today. They sound fantastic. But my model is a late 1950s steam era model of the DAR. It was exclusively steam, and to run it as it was in I think it's 1958. I have a timetable. They dropped the fires in 1959. That was when they brought in diesel. So I'm 1 year before that.
But isn't that what's so neat about the hobby is it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, you can model something that's got some relation to the railway.
Yeah. So Dave, you're between resident. Well, you're not homeless. You've not yet.
Well, it depends when I get home tonight. I'll find out.
Well, fingers are crossed. I'll make a phone call. We'll get it looked after for you.
No, please don't.
Yeah, better if I don't. Okay, no problem. I get that a lot. But you're actually between layouts.
Yeah.
Where were you at with the layout before you moved? Like just the MR at a glance type thing, the room dimensions,
It was
what,
about 25 by 25, and roughly a big L shape. At the L, one component of the L, I had a helix, so I had built. The final plan was to be a double deck O-scale layout. I had finished the first deck, had the helix completely done. I actually blasted 2 holes through my stone foundation, so to build the track. So crazy.
You hid that when you sold it, right?
Actually, no, I didn't. I didn't. So me, the civil engineer, was very well. The tunneling was excellent. I think it was stronger than the original house.
Fire the hole.
But when I started Little Canada, it just got to the point where coming home at night, I didn't feel like getting into a large layout building process. So focus more on structures and rolling stock and finishing the first layer. So I was working on the model of the Kentville station, which in O-scale is, I even truncated, and it's still this big. So
Yeah.
there's a lot
So
more
you're
to
excited
do.
to start again?
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Fire in the belly?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
Give me a call if you need any help. Neil, layout at a glance. Where are you at with you call your layout the Lindenport and Lindenville and Newport subs?
Lindenport, GCCP. So
it's the heat. It's getting to me.
It's so we moved in the house in 2013. I started. I had to finish the basement first before we got into it. So I think the bench work was started around December 2014. So time's gone by fast, but I'm about 5 years into layout. I have basically at this point all the track down. I've got a helix on mine as well, but it's single level, but I have staging under one central peninsula. And I probably got scenery, maybe 25% done, a lot of scenery to go, but one of the things that when you're starting, for me, getting back into building a layout and stuff like that, I look at bench work and even track work and wiring. I look at that as a means to the end to get to the point where I can do scenery and I can actually start getting rolling stock on the layout and start taking pictures. I really enjoy the photography aspect of the hobby and recreating. I've actually done a lot of YouTube videos, which from the YouTube perspective, I really do it just because we talked about being influenced by like 1980. Well, at 9 years old in 1980 for me, I'm giving away my age, I never got to see this stuff. So the closest I get to see it is to go downstairs in the basement.
Time machine.
Yeah, it's a little, and that's what we talk about, little time machine. So I get the video camera out and I try and just recreate what it might have been like back in June 1980 to watch the CP B&M operation, a couple Jeep 9s, a C424, and RS18, just to see that and experience that's probably the closest I'll ever get. So, but it's great to be able to do that, and from building a layout, I can't wait. This is, like I said, my third layout, and in every aspect that was always what I tried to do: get through the bench work process and get trains running, so I could get to scenery and structure building and all those things, and create three-dimensional art. That's one way to look at it.
Exactly.
Four-dimensional.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. With sound, that's right. Yeah, sound's come a long way.
Bob, layout at a glance. What are you modeling? Kind of the size of the room, and how did you? I know it's Bangor and Aroostook.
Bangor and Aroostook.
How'd you park on that?
Well, before kids, my wife and I traveled a couple times. We go to PEI quite a bit. She's got family there, and we either go through New England to PEI or go to PEI and then back through New England. And just love the area. And Bangor and Aroostook, have no idea why, but read some books on it, saw some pictures, and consists of an F3 followed by a BL2 followed by a Jeep, and then 3 or 4 different paint schemes.
The dog's breakfast.
The dog's breakfast of railroading.
Yeah, beautiful.
You
Love
know,
it.
just gorgeous. So
What era are you modeling, Bob?
I'm trying to keep it to late 70s.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, room's about 10 by 12 or so. I'm trying to model Searsport to Millinocket.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Right
so-
through northern Maine.
Yeah,
Junction.
so
Yep.
you get Searsport, which is the port with some coal, oil, and then you ring
Is
it
there
through
potato at Searsport or no?
potatoes.
Potatoes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Importing of starch that they would add into the paper, for
Okay.
cardboard to make it shiny,
Yeah.
and stiffener and that sort of thing. So I'm doing a lot of research. I love reading the books and what do you need starch for? Like, why are they importing all this starch off these boats from the Bahamas? And it's for paper.
Right.
So then you start learning about how they make paper and
Paper mills are cool.
and the paper mills. And
If you got, I used to spend a lot of time in the 80s going up to Millinocket, rail fanning around Millinocket. So we get to that point. We got a lot of shots of East Millinocket Mill, Millinocket
really?
Mill.
Yeah.
I rail fanned up there quite a bit with a friend of mine who actually now worked for him for a while. But we did quite a bit of
I'd
rail
love to
fanning.
see some of the photos. I mean, they're getting harder and harder to find. What's his name? Melvin, I think is his last name.
George Melvin. Yeah.
Met him and his wife. He did a great book on all the.
He just did a presentation at the RPM meet in Connecticut.
okay.
Connecticut.
Yeah. He used to sell a lot of photos. Now they're all online. But he had a great book with all the structures.
Yeah.
So you've got your stations all the way along the line, and what's left or what was there, and the junction with the main central.
At Northern Main
Northern
Junction.
Main
yeah.
Junction. Now I'm doing some modeler's license because I like CN. Sorry, Bob. So instead of
Do we have security here?
If
If security could come and remove
CP,
Mr. Scott off of the
Brownville. Yeah.
at Brownville, I'm doing
Hey,
CN.
Hey, security's going to get you out of here. There's no CN modeling on the
It's
platform.
just CN out here. Our fourth guest is exclusively CN, right?
That's okay. I forgive you.
When Bob comes in the store, like I hide all the CP stuff and put all the CN stuff on. But that's kind of what I want to do, and have the nice paper mill and so on. But I mean, in a 10 by 12 room, I'm doing certain areas. But right now, I'm doing all 9 BL2s that they had and all the different,
Yeah. They were mostly
variations.
blue in 76.
Yeah, I love the solid blue scheme, and nobody seems to make it, so I'm having to paint myself.
Circus scheme has more flair, I guess.
So
Well, guys, I want to thank you very much for coming and sweltering and being a part of the very first episode of
Number 1.
of the Platforum.
Thank you very much
This was
for
good.
inviting.
I want you guys to come back if you can put up with me for a little more. I'd like
turn
you
the
guys
heat
to
down, we'll be here.
We'll turn the
Give
heat
it a couple
down.
months. I've had enough of you for one day, so that's
Yeah, no, this is great. A lot of times we talk to each other, and I've known each of you for a long time, but I've learned a lot just sitting here chatting about some of the different things that we've talked about. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for joining us on the Platform. We'll see you next time.